Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey to a time and a people we often romanticize, the Vikings. You've seen the movies, you've heard the epic sagas, and you probably think of them as these great, bearded warriors sailing to conquer new lands. But tonight, we're going to put you in the very worn-out leather boots of a Viking explorer. And trust me, it's not all glory and grand feasts. In fact, you probably wouldn't last a day. You'd be cold, wet, and utterly miserable. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know what your location and local time are in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey doesn't begin with a hero's call or a lust for gold. It begins with a long, cold winter and a hard truth. You're a farmer, a simple farmer in a land of rock and ice. The ground is hard, the growing season is short, and your clan is growing. Your father's land has been divided between you and your brothers, and the share you received is just not enough to feed your family. This is the reality of your life, a grinding, brutal existence where every single day is a struggle against the elements. This is the push, not the pull. It's a need for new land, new resources, a new beginning for your family. A mainstream historical fact is that this population pressure and scarcity of arable land in Scandinavia was one of the primary drivers of Viking exploration and expansion. It wasn't just about raiding, it was about survival. You are not a warrior seeking glory. You are a man seeking a home. The decision to leave is not an easy one. You've grown up here. The fjords, the mountains, the small stone houses are all you've ever known. The thought of leaving it all behind, of venturing into the vast, open ocean, fills you with a deep, bone-chilling fear. But the alternative is starvation, a slow, inevitable death for you and your family. So you make the choice. You pack what you can, some dried meat, some salted fish, and a few meager tools. Your wife looks at you with a mix of fear and quiet determination, and your children clutch at your legs, their small faces a constant reminder of the stakes. This isn't an adventure story. It's a story of desperation. You join a small group of other men, other farmers and outcasts, all with the same grim look in their eyes. They are not the brawny, boastful Vikings you read about in sagas, but rather ordinary men who have been pushed to their limits. They are your brothers in this journey, your only hope of survival. The mood is not one of excitement, but one of quiet, grim resolve. A quirky little tidbit of historical detail is that Viking explorers would sometimes bring their families' dogs and horses with them on these long voyages. The thought of a small dog huddled on a rocking longship seems both a bit ridiculous and strangely comforting. A final, small tether to the home you are leaving behind. You say your goodbyes, a quiet, tearful affair at the edge of the fjord. The air is cold and crisp, and the sky is a heavy gray blanket. The familiar smell of wood smoke and salt hangs in the air, a final nostalgic scent of your old life. You are a man in a world of myth, but your reality is far from it. Your world is one of hard choices and even harder consequences. And as you walk toward the longship, a sleek, terrifying ship with a single square sail, you can't help but feel a profound sense of loss. You are not a hero sailing toward a new world. You are a refugee, a man cast out by the land that gave birth to you. Historians still argue whether the Viking Age was primarily driven by a spirit of adventure and conquest, or by these more mundane, practical needs. Was it a time of bold, glorious exploration, or was it a time of desperate migration? The answer, like most things in history, is likely a mix of both. But for you, the man standing on the edge of the fjord, the answer is simple. You are leaving because you have to. You are leaving because there is nothing left for you here. And as you step onto the rocking deck of the longship, you are filled with a single, overwhelming thought. You are not sure if you will ever see your home again. The journey has begun. The shore, with its familiar smells and sounds, quickly shrinks into a thin, hazy line on the horizon. The longship, your new home, begins to rock and pitch with the rhythm of the open sea. This isn't the calm fjord you grew up in. This is the open, vast, and terrifying ocean. You're on a marvel of engineering, a sleek, beautiful ship that has been carved and shaped with a mastery that still inspires awe today. But you're not on a pleasure cruise. You are on a small, open boat, and the reality of life at sea quickly sets in. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's a damp, bone-chilling cold that seeps into your clothing and your skin. The air is filled with the constant, stinging spray of salt water, and your hair, your clothes, and your face are always wet. There is no shelter, no cabin, no warm, dry place to retreat to. You are out in the open, at the mercy of the wind, the sun, and the elements. You're not a passenger, you are a part of the ship, a cog in a human machine. Your body is a single, warm point in a vast, cold expanse, and you learn to huddle with the others, sharing what little body heat you can. The longship itself, a mainstream historical fact, was not designed for comfort. It was built for speed, agility, and a shallow draft that allowed it to land on beaches and sail up rivers. It was a masterpiece of naval architecture, but it was an open boat. There was no deck below, just the single open space where the rowers would sit. When the wind was right, the single square sail would be deployed, and the ship would fly across the waves. But when the wind died, you would be forced to take up an oar and row, a grueling, back-breaking exercise that would leave your muscles screaming with exhaustion. The work is relentless, a constant battle against the wind and the waves. You're surrounded by other men, but there is no privacy. You eat, sleep, and live in the same small space, and the smell of sweat, unwashed bodies, and salted fish is a constant, suffocating presence. A quirky little tidbit of Viking life at sea is that your sea chest, a small wooden box where you stored your few personal belongings, was also your seat and your table. It was a portable piece of furniture that was the only private space you had in a world of constant, enforced proximity. You might sit on it to row, eat your meal on top of it, and sleep next to it, using it as a small, insignificant barrier against the world. The days and nights blur into one long, cold, wet expanse. You learn to sleep while sitting up, propped against a pile of furs, your body swaying with the rocking of the ship. Your dreams are filled with the sound of waves, and your waking life is filled with the reality of them. The cold is a constant enemy, a relentless assault on your body. Your hands and feet are always numb, and your face is chapped and raw from the salt spray. You might try to tell yourself that this is all a grand adventure, that you are a part of a saga that will be sung for generations, but the reality is much more mundane. You are a man who is cold, wet, and tired. Historians still argue whether Viking longships were primarily used for exploration and trade or for raiding and conquest. Was their design a testament to their desire to see the world, or was it a tool for lightning-fast attacks? The truth is likely a mix of both. The same sleek, fast ships that carried warriors to plunder a monastery could also carry settlers to a new, uninhabited land. But for you, the man on the ship, the distinction doesn't matter. All you know is the constant rhythmic sway of the ship, the endless gray expanse of the ocean, and the cold that has settled deep into your bones. The journey has just begun, and you are already utterly exhausted. The rhythmic rocking of the longship, which had become a constant, hypnotic part of your life, is suddenly interrupted. The sky, which was a heavy gray blanket, turns into a bruised and angry mass of dark clouds. The wind, which had been a steady, cold hum, is now a howling shriek that tears at the sail and whips the water into a frenzy. This is the moment you have been dreading. This is a storm, and you are a small, insignificant piece of wood in a vast, terrifying, and merciless ocean. The longship, which seemed so strong and sturdy just moments ago, now feels fragile, a mere toy in the hands of the gods. The waves, once small, rocking mounds, are now towering mountains of water. They crash over the sides of the ship, drenching you to the bone with a cold, shocking spray that takes your breath away. You and the other men grab hold of the sides of the ship, your knuckles white, your bodies a single, desperate weight, trying to keep the ship from capsizing. The noise is deafening, a mix of the wind's howl, the crash of the waves, and the creaking, groaning wood of the longship. The entire world has become a chaotic mess of water, wind, and noise, and you are at the very center of it, utterly helpless. Navigating the open ocean was an incredible feat, a mainstream historical fact that speaks to the Vikings' bravery and skill. Without modern compasses or GPS, they relied on a deep understanding of the sea. They used the sun, the stars, the prevailing winds, and the direction of the waves to guide them. They were also said to have used a strange and mysterious tool known as a sunstone, a piece of crystal that, on a cloudy day, could be used to find the location of the sun. It's a bit of a mythic tool, a mysterious artifact of their age, and the very thought of it seems both a small comfort and a desperate gamble against the immense, terrifying power of nature. The storm rages for what feels like an eternity, but it eventually passes. The wind dies down, the clouds begin to part, and the sun, a pale, watery orb, peeks through. The sea, which was a violent, angry beast, now returns to its rhythmic, endless rocking. You are exhausted, soaked, and utterly terrified, but you are also alive. The longship is still in one piece, and the journey continues. But the fear, the memory of that storm, will stay with you, a constant reminder of how close you came to a watery grave. The ocean is not a friend. It is a powerful, unpredictable enemy, and you have to be constantly on your guard. Navigating to a new land wasn't just about surviving storms. It was also about knowing where you were going. A quirky little tidbit is that Vikings would often carry ravens with them on their voyages. These birds, when released, would fly in a specific direction. If they flew back to the ship, it meant land was too far away. If they flew in a straight line, it meant land was near. A natural feathered compass that was a crucial tool in the long journey across the sea. You'd find yourself looking up, a desperate prayer in your heart, for the sight of a bird, a small black speck on the vast gray horizon. It was a small sign of hope in a world of uncertainty. Historians still argue about the exact navigational methods Vikings used to sail across thousands of miles of open ocean. Was the sunstone a real, widely used tool, or was it a rare artifact? Did they have other, more sophisticated methods that have been lost to time? The answer is likely that their methods were a combination of everything they knew, a deep, intuitive knowledge of the sea and the sky that allowed them to make incredible journeys. But for you, the man on the ship, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the cold, wet reality of a storm, the feeling of utter helplessness, and the deep, silent relief when it's finally over. You are still alive, but you have no idea where you are, and the journey is far from over. The storm has passed, leaving you exhausted and soaked, but alive. The longship continues its endless rocking, a steady rhythm that you're slowly learning to live with. But with the adrenaline and terror of the storm fading, a different kind of misery begins to set in. The relentless, grinding hunger and thirst that are your constant companions on the open sea. You might be dreaming of a warm hearth and a steaming bowl of stew, but the reality of your Viking diet is a cold and unappetizing affair. Your meals are not the grand feasts of roasted meat and mead that you've heard sung about in the halls of chieftains. Your meals are functional, purely for sustenance, and they are relentlessly boring. You eat dried and salted fish, a mainstream historical fact that was the foundation of the Viking diet at sea. The fish is tough, rubbery, and incredibly salty, and you have to chew it for what feels like an eternity just to get it down. You also have some skyr, a kind of thick yogurt-like dairy product, and some dried bread or barley cakes. The food is bland, unappealing, and utterly without variety. You are not eating for pleasure. You are eating to survive. The thirst, however, is the real torment. You're surrounded by water, a vast, endless ocean of it, but it's a water you cannot drink. Your only source of hydration is the small supply of fresh water you brought with you, and it is a precious commodity, rationed out carefully by the herseer or chieftain. The water is often stale and has a strange, earthy taste from being stored in wooden casks, but you drink it without complaint, knowing that it's all you have. There's a constant, nagging craving for a big, refreshing drink of cold, clean water, and it's a craving that you know will not be satisfied for a very long time. You also get a quirky little tidbit of Viking life at sea. You have beer, not for celebration, but for hydration. Beer was a safer alternative to water on long voyages because the brewing process killed many of the bacteria that could cause sickness. It's a low alcohol brew, not a drink to get you drunk, but a necessary part of your daily sustenance. You drink it with a grim sense of irony, a small comfort in a world of discomfort. The thought of a drink of cold, fresh water is a memory that seems to belong to a different lifetime, and you learn to live with the constant, subtle taste of stale beer in your mouth. The lack of fresh food and vegetables on the long voyage would have a profound effect on your body. You'd be weak, your muscles would ache, and your energy would be constantly low. This wasn't a journey for the weak. It was a journey that would push your body to its absolute limits. And the lack of fresh food, the lack of certain vitamins, would also have a very real, very physical consequence that you don't even have a name for yet. Historians still argue whether the Vikings had other food sources on their long voyages. Did they try to fish during the journey? Or was the risk of being caught in a storm while a small boat was out too high? The answer is likely that it depended on the location and the duration of the journey. But for you, the man on the longship, the distinction doesn't matter. All you know is the taste of the salt on your tongue, the constant hunger in your stomach, and the deep, abiding misery of a diet that is designed purely for survival. You are a man who is living on hope and a few small, unappetizing pieces of salted fish. The hunger and thirst are a constant, gnawing presence. But with the steady rhythm of the ship and the monotony of the days, your body begins to adapt. But there is another kind of misery, a more insidious, pervasive kind that you cannot adapt to. It's the constant, grinding reality of filth, sickness, and the total lack of hygiene on a Viking longship. Your clothes are always damp, your hair is matted with salt, and the smell of unwashed bodies, stale food, and the sea is a constant, suffocating cloud that you can't escape. You are surrounded by other men in a very small, confined space. There is no privacy, no personal space, and absolutely no way to stay clean. You can't exactly jump overboard for a quick rinse, so you learn to live with the layers of salt, sweat, and grime that accumulate on your skin. The itching is a constant, maddening irritation. You might think that Vikings, with their reputation for being meticulous about their grooming, would have a better system. A mainstream historical fact is that in Viking culture, cleanliness was highly valued. They had a ritual of bathing every Saturday, and combs and grooming tools have been found in many Viking burial sites. But on a longship, all of that goes out the window. The need for survival overrides everything else, and the luxury of a bath is a memory that seems to belong to a different lifetime. The lack of hygiene has a very real, very dangerous consequence. You are in a petri dish of disease. The food is stale, the water is old, and you are surrounded by men who are also in the same state. A small sickness, a minor cold, can become a much more serious illness. Seasickness is a constant problem, a rolling, nauseating misery that makes you feel weak and utterly helpless. You might spend days with your head over the side of the ship, your stomach heaving, your body a mass of uncooperative misery. You can feel the strength draining out of you, and all you can do is hope that it passes, and that you have enough strength to row when it's finally over. One quirky tidbit about Viking hygiene at sea is that they would carry louse combs with them. These small, meticulously carved combs were an essential tool for personal hygiene, a small, desperate attempt to fight against the infestation of lice and fleas that would have been a constant problem on a long voyage. The thought of a grown man, a proud Viking warrior, spending his time picking lice out of his hair seems a bit ridiculous, but it's a very real, very mundane reality of life at sea. It's a small, sad detail that highlights the immense gulf between the romanticized image of a Viking and the cold, unappealing reality. Your health is a constant gamble. A small cut, a simple blister, can become a serious infection. There is no doctor on board, no modern medicine, and a simple fever could be a death sentence. You are at the mercy of your body's own immune system, and you pray that it's strong enough to withstand the onslaught of disease and filth. The constant damp, the lack of sun, and the poor diet would all have a cumulative effect on your health, making you weak and susceptible to illness. Historians still argue whether Vikings had a better grasp of hygiene than their European contemporaries. Some suggest that their love of cleanliness gave them an edge in health and survival. Others argue that their hygiene on land was a simple cultural ritual, and their reality at sea was just as miserable as anyone else's. The truth is likely that they were a people who valued cleanliness, but were also practical enough to know that on a long, arduous journey, some things had to be sacrificed. But for you, the man on the longship, the distinction doesn't matter. All you know is the constant, maddening itch, the oppressive smell of 100 unwashed bodies, and the deep, silent fear that a simple sickness could be the end of you. You are a man who is living in filth, and you are utterly exhausted by it. The sickness and the filth are a constant, nagging misery. but they are a misery you learn to live with, a part of the background noise of your life at sea. But there is another kind of misery, a more insidious, all-encompassing kind that you can never truly escape. It's the cold, a bone-chilling, soul-crushing cold that seeps into your very core and never, ever leaves. The cold is a living, breathing thing that wraps itself around you, a relentless enemy that seeks to sap your strength and your will. You're always damp. The constant spray from the waves, the rain, the mist, it all conspires to keep your clothes perpetually wet. A mainstream historical fact is that your only protection against this brutal cold is your clothing, which is made of wool and fur. Wool, which has a natural lanolin that repels water, is your primary defense. You wear layers of it, thick tunics and leggings, but it's never quite enough. The wind, a biting, relentless force, tears at your clothes and finds every single gap, every single opening, and it chills you to the very bone. You can feel your fingers and toes going numb, a terrifying, silent threat that you can do nothing about. There is no shelter, no cabin, no warm place to retreat to. At night, you huddle with the other men, sharing what little body heat you have, a small, shivering mass of humanity trying to survive against the immense, cold power of the ocean. You might wrap yourself in a heavy woolen blanket or a sealskin cape, a heavy, waterproof layer that offers a small degree of protection. But the cold always finds a way in. It's a physical reality, a constant nagging pain that makes your joints ache and your muscles feel stiff and uncooperative. You'd find yourself dreaming of a warm hearth, a crackling fire, a hot meal. The memory of warmth, the feeling of dry clothes and a soft bed, is a distant, almost mythical thing. Your hands, raw and chapped from the cold and the salt, are a testament to the life you lead. A quirky tidbit about this is that some Vikings would wear shoes made from sealskin, a natural waterproof material that offered a small degree of protection against the constant damp. The thought of wearing a shoe made from a seal, a creature of the sea, seems both strange and strangely appropriate. A small, desperate act of survival in a world that is trying to kill you. The mental toll of the cold is just as bad as the physical. It's hard to think, hard to focus, hard to do anything when your body is in a state of constant low-grade hypothermia. The world becomes a series of simple, brutal tasks: row, eat, sleep, and try to stay warm. The conversations with the other men, which were sparse to begin with, become even more so. You are a small, isolated group, a single point of light in a vast, dark, and cold world, and you are all just trying to survive. The journey is not just a physical one. It is a mental one, a constant battle against the cold and the endless monotony of the sea. Historians still argue whether the Vikings had a better tolerance for cold than their European contemporaries. Some suggest that their Nordic genes and hardier lifestyle made them better suited for life in the north. Others argue that it was simply a matter of enduring a greater level of misery, a testament to their sheer will to survive. The truth is likely a mix of both. They were a people who were born into a cold world, and they were a people who were willing to endure anything for a better life. But for you, the man on the longship, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the constant numbing cold, the feeling of the wind on your face, and the desperate low-grade fear that you might not survive this long, miserable journey. The cold, wet, and endless misery of the sea has become your entire world. The rocking of the longship, the dampness of your clothes, the ache in your joints, it's all a part of a brutal, unending rhythm. But then, one day, the rhythm changes. The gray, watery horizon, which has been your only view for weeks, is broken by a thin, dark line. Land. The word is whispered among the men, a sound of profound relief and quiet disbelief. After all this time, after all this misery, you have finally arrived. The sight of land doesn't bring a wave of triumphant cheers, but a quiet, weary exhaustion. You and the other men are too tired for celebration. You simply stare, a small, grateful smile on your face, at the distant, unmoving land. You can see the shapes of trees, the rise of mountains, and the dark promise of solid ground. The sound of the waves still crashes against the hull of the ship, but it no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a final, gentle push toward a new beginning. The journey is almost over, and a new, different kind of struggle is about to begin. Your arrival is not the end of your misery, but a shift in its nature. A mainstream historical fact is that the sagas often describe the new lands with a mix of wonder and practicality. They speak of Vinland as a land of grapes and fertile ground, a perfect place for a new settlement. But they also speak of a land of unknown dangers, of fierce weather, and of native populations. You are not arriving at a welcoming new world. You are arriving at a blank slate, a place that is waiting to be filled with your hope, your labor, and your quiet desperation. As you get closer, you can smell the land. It's a clean, earthy scent, a welcome change from the stench of salt water and unwashed bodies. You can hear the sounds of birds, a different kind of song than the mournful cry of gulls. And as the long ship is beached on a sandy shore, you finally get to step off. The feeling of solid, unmoving ground under your feet is a strange and beautiful thing. Your legs, which have become accustomed to the constant rocking motion of the ship, feel wobbly and uncertain. But you stand there, a small, defiant figure on a vast, untouched land, and you can't help but feel a profound sense of hope. The first few days are a blur of exploration. You walk through a world that is so different from your own. The trees are different, the plants are different, and the very air has a new, exciting taste to it. Your chieftain, or herseer, will lead a small party to explore the land, to find a suitable place for a settlement. A quirky little tidbit of Viking exploration is that they would use a kind of landnamabok, or Book of Settlements, a sort of mental map of the new land. They would describe the geography, the resources, and the best places to settle, a way of mapping a world that was completely new to them. The thought of them, a small group of rugged explorers trying to map a new land with nothing but their own eyes and memories, seems both incredible and a little bit sad, a testament to their deep desire for a new home. Historians still argue about the exact location of these Viking settlements in North America. Was Vinland a single location, or was it a series of settlements? The answer is a matter of ongoing debate, and it highlights the challenge of piecing together history from sagas and archaeological evidence. But for you, the man standing on the shore, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the feeling of the solid ground under your feet, the smell of the new land, and the quiet, terrifying knowledge that this is your new home. Your journey across the sea is over, and your new journey, the much harder journey of survival, has just begun. The wonder of the new land, the smell of the earth, and the feel of solid ground quickly fades into a new, more grueling reality. The journey across the ocean was a test of endurance, but the true test of your will begins now. the back-breaking labor of building a new life from scratch. The land is beautiful, but it is also wild and untamed. The trees are thick and dense, the rocks are heavy and unforgiving, and the ground, for now, is simply not your own. You have a new home, but you have to build it yourself, with your own 2 hands. The work is relentless. You spend your days with an axe in your hands, swinging at trees. The sharp, rhythmic thud of the axe, a new soundtrack to your life. Your hands, which were already raw and chapped from the sea, are now covered in blisters and calluses. Your muscles, which were sore from rowing, are now screaming with a new kind of pain. This is the price of a new life. A mainstream historical fact is that the first Viking settlements were often built using the local materials. In places like Iceland and Greenland, they would build sod houses, which were insulated and protected against the harsh cold. In places like Vinland, they would build wooden longhouses, a central piece of Viking life, a place for your family, your community, and a symbol of your new beginning. You work from sunup to sundown. The days are long, and the nights are filled with the quiet, profound exhaustion of a body pushed to its absolute limits. You and the other men are a single, coordinated machine, working together to clear the land, to build the houses, and to establish a new community. The camaraderie you had on the ship, a grim sense of shared misery, now becomes a stronger, more profound bond. You are not just a group of men who are trying to survive. You are a group of men who are building a future. The thought of it, a future you are building with your own hands, is a small, flickering light of hope in a world of hard, grueling labor. One quirky tidbit about this process is the immense value of iron. You have brought your tools with you, your axes, your saws, your knives. Iron was a rare and precious commodity in the Norse world, and the very act of using these tools to build a new life in a new land was a testament to their value. You would carefully sharpen your axe every night, your hands moving with a practiced, careful rhythm. It wasn't just a tool, it was a lifeline, a symbol of your ability to shape this new world, to make it your own. The first winter is a silent, terrifying, and profound test. You have built a home, but you have no idea if it will be strong enough to withstand the bitter cold and the heavy snow. You have planted crops, but you have no idea if they will grow, if they will feed you. You have a roof over your head, but the sound of the wind, a long, mournful howl, is a constant, terrifying presence. You are not just building a home, you are building a life, a future, and you have no idea if it will work. Historians still argue whether the Viking settlements in North America were intended to be permanent or if they were just seasonal. Were they a serious attempt at colonization, or were they a temporary settlement for exploring the new land? The answer is likely a mix of both, a series of failed attempts and temporary settlements, all a part of a long, arduous journey of discovery. But for you, the man standing in your newly built house, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the feeling of the rough-hewn wood under your hands, the smell of the new home, and the quiet, terrifying knowledge that this is your new life. And you have no idea if it will last. The rhythm of your new life is one of back-breaking labor, the sound of the axe, the feel of the heavy rocks, the constant, unending work of building a future. But one day, the rhythm breaks. You and a few other men are out foraging, looking for food, and you hear a sound that is not the wind or the waves. It's a human sound. It's a sound of a people you've never seen, a language you don't understand. This is the moment you realize that this new land, this vast empty world you thought was your own, is not empty at all. You are not alone, and your new neighbors are not happy about your presence. The first encounter is tense, a silent, standoffish affair. You stand in a field, your axe is in your hands, and you see them, a group of people with a different kind of clothing, a different kind of weapon, and a look in their eyes that is a mirror of your own. They are curious, but also wary, and there is a deep, abiding fear on both sides. A mainstream historical fact is that the Viking sagas refer to these people as the Skraelings. This was a term that could be translated as wretches or weaklings, a derogatory name that says a lot about the Vikings' initial and often violent view of the indigenous people. But you, the man on the ground, don't see a wretch. You see a human being, a person who is just as scared, just as determined, and just as protective of their land as you are of your new home. The initial encounters are often a mix of trade and tension. They have things you need, furs, pelts, and a deep knowledge of the land. You have things they need, iron tools, weapons, and woven cloth. The trade is a silent, precarious dance of gestures and signals. You lay out your goods, they lay out theirs, and a nervous, silent exchange takes place. The trade is a necessity for both sides, but it is also a source of constant underlying tension. You are two worlds that have just collided, and neither of you knows what the other is thinking. The conflict, when it comes, is often a result of misunderstanding, fear, and a deep, unshakable distrust. You might have a dispute over a piece of land, a trade gone wrong, or a simple miscommunication that spirals into a full-blown war. The violence is brutal, quick, and terrifying. You are not fighting for sport. You are fighting for your life, your home, your family. The sound of their weapons, the feel of their arrows, the sight of their fury, it all leaves a deep, indelible mark on your soul. A quirky little tidbit from the sagas is the Vikings' reaction to the indigenous people's technology. They were said to be fascinated and a little bit terrified by the indigenous people's canoes, which they called skin boats. These boats were fast, agile, and they seemed to appear out of nowhere. The thought of a group of men in a small, fast boat appearing out of the mist was a source of fear for the Vikings. It's a small detail that shows the deep, unshakable cultural and technological divide that existed between the two groups. It's a subtle reminder that the Vikings, for all their arrogance and their technological superiority, were still in a world that they did not understand. Historians still argue whether the encounters between Vikings and indigenous people were primarily peaceful or violent. Some argue that the sagas, which are a source of entertainment, would have emphasized the conflict to make for a better story. Others argue that the archaeological evidence and the sagas themselves point to a series of violent, bloody conflicts. The truth is likely a mix of both, a series of brief periods of peaceful trade, punctuated by violent, bloody wars. But for you, the man on the ground, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the tense, silent fear of an encounter, the fleeting moments of trade, and the deep, silent terror of a conflict that you know is always just around the corner. You are not a pioneer. You are an invader. And your new neighbors are not happy about it. The conflicts with the locals are terrifying, but they are a form of communication, a way of interacting with the new world you found. But there is a different kind of terror, a more subtle, insidious kind that you cannot fight with an axe or a shield. It's the deep silence of isolation. You are in a vast, empty world, thousands of miles from the home you know. You have your family, your fellow settlers, but the knowledge that you are a small, insignificant dot in a vast, empty sea is a constant, suffocating weight on your soul. There is no news from home. The world you left behind, the feuds, the feasts, the births, the deaths, it all exists in a vacuum. You don't know if your cousins are still alive, if your mother is well, if your clan has moved on without you. You are a ghost, a memory that is slowly, surely fading away. And the loneliness, the profound sense of being utterly cut off, is a mental and emotional toll that is just as great as the physical toll of the journey and the settlement. You might find yourself staring out at the vast, empty ocean, wondering if a ship from home will ever arrive, a small, foolish hope in a world of practicality and grim reality. A mainstream historical fact is that in Viking culture, the community, the thing, and the storytelling, the saga, were the central pillars of their society. They were a people who defined themselves by their connection to others, by their shared history, and their shared stories. But here, in this new land, those connections are gone. The stories are new, the history is unwritten, and you are left to create your own community. The men around you, the women who came with you, they are your only tether to the world you know. Your days are filled with hard work and grim silence, and the only comfort you have is the shared, silent knowledge of your isolation. You might try to cope with this in small, insignificant ways. You might carve a small wooden doll for your child, a doll that reminds you of the home you left behind. You might tell stories to your family at night, stories of the old gods, of the old heroes, of the old world. But the stories have a different weight here, a different meaning. They are not just stories. They are a desperate attempt to keep a connection to a world that you are slowly losing. A quirky little tidbit of this isolation is the presence of rune stones in some settlements. Small stones with runes carved into them. A message for a world that may never come to read them. They were a way of leaving a mark, a way of saying, "I was here." A silent, heartbreaking message in a world of silence. The isolation also has a profound effect on the community. A scholarly debate phrase is whether this profound isolation led to a stronger sense of community and cooperation, or whether it led to more internal conflicts and disputes. Did the shared isolation force them to work together and bond more closely, or did the lack of external distractions and the pressure of survival create a tense, strained, and ultimately fragile community? The answer is likely a mix of both. They were a group of men and women who were forced to rely on each other, and that reliance would have forged a powerful bond. But the lack of outside influence, the lack of new ideas, and the constant pressure of survival would have also created a breeding ground for conflict. For you, the man living in this quiet, isolated world, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the deep, profound silence, the lack of news from home, and the overwhelming knowledge that you are a small, fragile human being in a vast, empty, and terrifying world. You have survived the journey across the sea, and you have survived the conflicts with the locals, but you are now facing a new kind of enemy, the enemy of the mind, and you have no idea if you will ever win that battle. You are not a pioneer. You are a prisoner of the new world you have found, and the only way out is back, a journey you are not sure you can make. The deep silence of isolation is your constant companion, but with the changing of the seasons, it's joined by a new, more immediate kind of misery. The air, which had a crisp, clean scent, now carries the bitter promise of winter. The days, which were long and filled with the unending labor of building a new life, are now short, gray, and filled with a sense of dread. The long, dark winter, a brutal reality of the North, is upon you, and you are not in the familiar, comforting confines of your home. You are in a new land, a new home, and you have no idea if it will be enough to protect you. The days are a blur of pale light, a long, drawn-out twilight that gives way to an endless, pitch-black night. You are confined to your longhouse, a small, dark space filled with the smoke of a central fire, the smell of bodies, and the sound of silence. The bitter cold is a constant, suffocating presence that seeps through the cracks in the walls, a relentless enemy that seeks to sap your strength and your will. This is the ultimate test, the true measure of your ability to survive. You and your family, your fellow settlers, are a small, fragile point of warmth in a vast, empty, and terrifying world of ice and snow. A mainstream historical fact is that these northern winters were long and brutal, and the very survival of a settlement depended on a successful harvest and a careful rationing of food. Your very existence for the next 6 months is a gamble, a desperate hope that you have enough salted meat, dried fish, and fermented grain to last until the sun returns. The days are spent in a state of low-grade anxiety, a constant worry that the food will run out, that the fire will go out, that the cold will finally find a way to kill you. The psychological toll of being confined to a small, dark space for months on end is immense, and you find yourself dreaming of the sun, of the feel of warm earth under your feet, and of a world that is not a vast, unending blanket of white. A quirky little tidbit of this time is the Viking concept of wintering over. It wasn't just a physical act of survival, it was a psychological one. You had to have a strong will, a deep sense of resilience, and a profound, unshakable hope that you would see the spring. The nights were long, dark, and filled with the terrifying sounds of the new world. The howl of wolves, the crack of ice, the mournful groan of the wind. It all conspired to remind you that you were in a place that did not want you. You might try to pass the time by telling stories, by carving small wooden dolls for your children, by mending your clothes. But the time seems to move in a slow, agonizing crawl. The winter is not just a season. It is a profound, unyielding test of your will to live. You are a small, insignificant piece of humanity, and the winter is a colossal, powerful force that is trying to erase you, and you have no idea if you will survive it. Historians still argue whether Viking settlements in places like Greenland failed due to the cold, or if they failed due to a combination of factors, including a changing climate, a breakdown of trade routes, and a series of conflicts with the local Inuit populations. Was the cold the ultimate enemy, or was it just one of many? The answer is likely that it was a combination of all three, a perfect storm of bad luck and difficult circumstances. But for you, the man confined to your longhouse, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the deep, profound cold, the terrifying, endless darkness, and the silent, unshakable fear that you might not see the sun again. You are not a pioneer. You are a prisoner of winter, and you have no idea if you will ever be set free. The long, dark winter is a profound and unyielding test of your will to live, but within that test, there is a more immediate, more terrifying enemy. It's not the cold, it's not the darkness, it's the constant, gnawing fear of famine. You are in a new land, a new home, and you are utterly dependent on a successful harvest and a careful rationing of your supplies. The food you brought with you is running low, and the crops you planted are buried under a thick blanket of snow. This is the reality of your life, a constant low-grade anxiety that your small, fragile community might not have enough food to survive. Your days are not just about staying warm, they are about rationing. Every small piece of dried meat, every chunk of salted fish is a precious commodity. You and your family get a small, meager portion, just enough to keep you alive, but not enough to feel full. The hunger is a constant physical presence, a hollow ache in your stomach that never goes away. You might try to tell yourself that this is all a part of the journey, that you are a strong Viking who can endure anything, but the reality is that the hunger is slowly, surely sapping your strength and your will to live. A mainstream historical fact is that the Viking diet, even in their homeland, was often precarious and relied heavily on preserved foods. On a journey of this magnitude, the reliance on salted fish, dried meat, and hardtack bread was absolute. They also brought root vegetables with them, like turnips and cabbages, which could be stored for a long time. These were not the most appealing foods, but they were a source of sustenance, a thin, fragile line between life and death. The act of eating is no longer a pleasure. It is a desperate, methodical act of survival. You eat slowly, chewing every single bite, trying to make the meager portion last as long as possible. The winter stretches on, and with it, your fear grows. You worry about the long, hungry months ahead, the possibility that your supplies will not last. You might find yourself having to take desperate measures. A quirky little tidbit from history is the practice of eating bark bread, a kind of flour made from grinding the inner bark of a pine tree. It was a sign of a desperate, last-ditch effort to survive, a testament to the brutal reality of famine. The thought of having to eat the bark of a tree, a symbol of your new home, is a grim, chilling reminder of how close you are to starvation. The psychological toll of this constant fear is immense. It's hard to think, hard to dream, hard to have hope when your mind is constantly occupied by the thought of food. The hunger is a physical reality, but the fear of it is a mental one, a constant, suffocating cloud that hangs over your community. You find yourself looking at your fellow settlers, their faces thin and pale, their eyes filled with the same fear that you feel. This is a shared, silent misery, and you are all in it together. Historians still argue whether Viking settlements failed more from famine or from conflict with the locals. Was the lack of food the ultimate killer, or was it just one of many factors that led to their demise? The answer is likely a combination of both. A famine would weaken the community, making them more vulnerable to attack. A conflict would destroy their food sources, leading to a famine. The two are intertwined, a vicious cycle of violence and hunger. But for you, the man in the longhouse, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the deep, profound hunger, the constant, low-grade anxiety, and the quiet, terrifying knowledge that your survival is a daily, precarious gamble. You are not a pioneer. You are a prisoner of your hunger, and you have no idea if you will ever be set free. The hunger is a constant, grinding misery, a physical reality you live with every day. But with the return of spring, a new kind of yearning takes its place. The days are getting longer, the sun is warmer, and the snow is slowly beginning to melt. This is the time when the ice breaks, the ships can sail, and the thought of a message from home, a word from the world you left behind, becomes a powerful, aching need. But you know in your heart that a message rarely gets home, and even if it does, it will be years before a reply could ever reach you. You are in a state of profound, unending isolation. You left your family, your friends, and your entire clan behind, and there is no way to know what has happened to them. Are they well? Are they happy? Have they forgotten about you? The silence is deafening, a profound reminder of how alone you truly are. You might find yourself staring out at the vast, empty ocean, a small, foolish hope in your heart that a ship will one day appear on the horizon, carrying a message from the world you used to call home. But you know that the journey is long and treacherous, and the chances of a ship arriving are slim to none. You are not a pioneer. You are a ghost, a memory in a world that is slowly, surely forgetting you. A mainstream historical fact is that Viking culture was primarily an oral one. Information was passed down through sagas, long epic stories that were memorized and recited. The news from one part of the Viking world to another was a slow, deliberate process, carried by travelers and traders. The idea of a quick message, a letter, or a telegram is a foreign concept. Your only connection to the world you left behind is through the stories you tell yourself, the memories you hold, and the hope that someone, somewhere, is telling a story about you. You might try to send a message back. You might carve a small rune into a piece of wood, a simple message for your family, a small, heartbreaking attempt to connect across a vast, endless ocean. A quirky little tidbit of this isolation is that Vikings would often carve these runic messages into small pieces of wood or bone. They were not just messages. They were a way of leaving a mark, a way of saying, "I was here." The thought of a small piece of wood with a small carved message floating on a vast, indifferent ocean is a sad and profound image, a testament to the human need for connection. The profound silence of isolation, the ache for news from home, and the constant struggle to survive have all taken their toll. And so, after a few years of backbreaking labor, of constant fear and profound loneliness, a decision is made. The settlement is not a success. The conflicts with the locals are too great, the winters are too brutal, and the new land, for all its beauty, is simply not worth the cost. You are going home. But the journey back is not a triumphal march. It is a long, dangerous, and uncertain voyage, a mirror image of the journey you took to get here, but with a different kind of burden. You pack up your things, your small, precious iron tools, your few belongings, and you say your goodbyes to the land you once hoped would be your home. You are leaving a grave, a small, quiet, and profound burial ground for the men and women who did not survive. You are leaving the bones of a dream, and you are filled with a strange, bittersweet sense of both relief and loss. You have a long, treacherous journey ahead of you, and you have no idea what you will find on the other side. A mainstream historical fact is that the journey back was just as dangerous, if not more so, than the journey out. The longships, which were already old and battered, would have to brave the same storms, the same cold, and the same endless ocean. The food supplies would be low, and the morale of the crew would be even lower. This is not a journey of hope. It is a journey of grim necessity. The voyage back is a blur of old fears and new realities. The longship, which once felt like a new, terrifying home, now feels like a familiar prison. The sound of the waves, the cold spray, the constant ache in your joints, it all returns with a new kind of intensity. You might find yourself staring out at the vast, empty ocean, a profound sense of loneliness washing over you. You are a man who has no home. The one you left behind is a distant, hazy memory, and the one you just left is a place of failure and sorrow. You are a man in a state of profound, unending limbo. A quirky little tidbit of this journey back is the presence of ghost ships, or rumors of lost ships. A long ship that left for a new land and never returned would become a ghost story, a myth told around the fire. The thought of a long ship, with its crew of desperate explorers lost to the sea, is a chilling and profound image. The very real possibility of your ship becoming one of these ghost stories is a constant, quiet fear. You are not just sailing home. You are sailing away from a world of sorrow, and you are hoping that you don't become a part of its mythology. And then, one day, you see it. A familiar coastline, the smells of your home, the sounds of your people. The journey is over, and you are finally home. But you are not the same person who left. You are a man with a different kind of look in your eyes, a man who has seen things that no one here can understand. The world you left behind has changed. The people are older, the children are bigger, and the stories of your journey, which are now being told, are a far cry from the brutal reality of what you experienced. You are a hero to them, a man of great courage, but you know in your heart that you are simply a survivor. Historians still argue whether Viking sagas exaggerated the hardships of the return journey to make for a better story. Was it truly as difficult and as dangerous as they claimed? Or was it a narrative tool to heighten the drama? The answer is likely a mix of both. But for you, the man who has just returned home, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the profound sense of loss, the quiet grief for the men and women who did not return, and the deep, abiding knowledge that a part of you will always be in that new, wild, and unforgiving land. You are not a pioneer. You are a man who has survived a dream, and you are left to live with the reality of it. The journey home is over, and you are left to live with the quiet reality of it. You are not a hero, but a man with a different kind of look in your eyes. A man who has seen a new, terrifying world and returned from it. The people in your village, the people you once called family, see you as a man who has accomplished a great feat, but you know in your heart that your journey was not a grand adventure. It was a long, brutal, and often miserable struggle for survival. And with the end of that journey, your story, your quiet, unromantic legacy begins. Your legacy, whether you returned home or died in that new, wild land, is a complicated one. You are a pioneer, an explorer, a man who dared to venture into the unknown. But you are also a man who was driven by desperation, a man who was a part of a brutal, unforgiving system. A mainstream historical fact is that while we remember the great Viking explorers like Leif Erikson and Eric the Red, the vast majority of Viking settlers and explorers are completely anonymous. Their names are lost to time, their stories are forgotten, and their quiet, unsung legacy is a testament to the fact that history is not just made by kings and heroes, but by ordinary men and women who were just trying to survive. You may have returned home, and you might spend the rest of your days as a storyteller, a man who can command the attention of a crowd with tales of a new, wild land. But the stories you tell are not the stories you experienced. They are the stories of a hero, not the stories of a man who was cold, wet, and scared. Or you may have died in that new land, your bones a part of its soil, your grave a quiet, forgotten reminder of a dream that failed. Your body is a part of the history of that land, but your story is a part of the history of your home, a saga that will be told and retold, but a saga that will never truly capture the reality of your experience. There's a quirky tidbit about this legacy. In some sagas, there's a mention of a glorious death, a death in battle that would lead a Viking to Valhalla. But the reality of a death in a new, wild land, from sickness or from hunger, was not glorious. It was a quiet, lonely, and unceremonious end. The thought of a Viking, a man who dreamed of a warrior's death, dying from a simple fever, is a sad and profound image, a testament to the brutal, unromantic reality of their lives. Historians still argue about the true legacy of the Viking explorers. Were they pioneers who opened up new worlds, or were they simply a footnote in the history of a brutal age of conquest and desperation? Was their journey a celebration of the human spirit, or was it a sad, tragic story of a people who were pushed to their absolute limits? The answer is likely a mix of both. They were a people who were driven by both a lust for glory and a desperate need for a new home. But for you, the man who has lived this story, the debate doesn't matter. All you know is the profound weight of a life that was both epic and utterly miserable, a life that you are now left to live with. Now, as the long journey comes to an end and the final echoes of the saga fade away, you can finally feel your mind start to rest. The heavy weight of the longship, the feel of the cold sea, the ache of the endless journey. Let it all drift away from you, a distant hazy memory. The tension in your shoulders can finally release, and the thoughts that have been racing through your mind can slow to a soft, gentle crawl. The story is over, the fear has faded, and all that is left is the quiet. Feel yourself getting heavier, sinking deeper into the soft comfort of your bed. The ancient world is now a peaceful, distant echo, a whisper on the wind. Let the images fade out like a slow sunset over the fjords. Your mind is quiet now, the long journey is done, and you are finally at peace. Just let go and drift away into a deep, gentle sleep.